Kia ora everyone, and welcome back to Mirror and Muse. This week we have Aroha, who is a beautiful healer, or what do you usually go by? You usually use a different term, yeah?
I'd probably use Kaimiri more than anything, but healer sure as well, because the work isn't just in the body work that I do.
Cool. So Aroha and I met quite a while ago, a few years ago, on a wānanga together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that time was around when you started really getting into doing Mirimiri, eh?
Yep.
And so we met at a wānanga on Waiheke Island and kind of connected there, but haven't stayed super in touch. But I always keep up to date with what you're doing on social media. And so I thought, what a cool person to come have on the podcast. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Would you like to just give us a little bit of an introduction about who you are and what you do?
Sure. What I do, so as I said before, I'm a Kaimiri, and that wānanga that you mentioned that we met at was actually like the initiation of that entire journey for me. And yeah, I guess my experiences in that have evolved and developed, and obviously in my relationship with Joydah, there's so many things that we do together, and we've come into these spaces of running voice activation, and I often find myself in other people's spaces just supporting in any ways I can, like at breathworks or at wānangas, and just open to the opportunities that the universe continues to provide to me, and seeing how I can step up and show up in those spaces.
Oh yeah, and you have such a powerful but quiet kind of presence about you. You're very toe in who you are, and you also don't need a lot of words to explain who you are, at least when I've seen you in the workspace. So I'm interested, you mentioned about that the place we met at the wānanga was like your initiation. So I just was keen to know what pushed you into activating your healing gifts, and how did that come about for you?
I guess I feel like, my whole life had prepared me for that moment in a way, but I think particularly that year, it was about the middle of the year we had that wānanga. That year was probably one of the more tumultuous years of my life, where everything had gotten a bit dark, ended a relationship that had become abusive. I had been promoted to be a manager at my work, and I quit my job, and I moved into this tiny house and lived by myself, which was the first time in my entire life I'd actually lived alone. And it was just, I think they call it that dark night of the soul, where I was like, nothing in my life feels right. There's something else that I'm supposed to be doing. And whatever I've been doing, that's not it. I'm acknowledging and appreciating all the lessons and blessings that had come from that. And so I had spent a lot of time by myself that year, a lot of months just in this little space, really getting to know who I was and peeling back those layers. And I had been called to Chile's wānanga spaces for quite some time, but I always found a barrier, and that reason for me was finances. But I think it was that willingness to actually invest and step up to the challenge of change. And so I think after all that time on my own, I had found the strength to answer the call. And I'd also had been doing some work with a friend of mine, Sarah, who does holistic coaching, and that was the first time I had stepped into anything like that. And it was just those little pushes and nudges that it was like, okay, that there's something in this world that you're supposed to be doing. I'd always been driven to support people and help people. I went and studied psychology, but I was like, what is this? This doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how I'm supposed to help people with that. So many moments in my life, but that one year in particular was just a big push of like, you can't keep doing what you're doing anymore because you're getting sick and you're not okay. So what is going to first alleviate what you're experiencing? And that journey of finding myself again took me into the places of being able to support others on that journey as well.
And so around that time, was that around the time you and Joydah met as well?
Yeah, so we connected, I'd say, about a month after that wānanga, and met in person about 2 months after that wānanga. And funnily enough, it was through Chelita's, so Chelita also met Joydah on Waiheke Island.
Oh, yeah.
We were there. It was through like her posts. I was like, oh, who's this cool chick singing songs?
Mm-hmm.
And then when we first met, Joydah came to pick me up from Napier to drive me home back to Queenstown. It was a long drive, and so by the time we got there, I didn't get out. But along the way, where we stopped on the way was at Chelita's house. And I was like, oh shit, how have I ended up back in this field of this woman, you know?
Yeah.
It was her that held that wānanga that initiated everything for me. Even on that journey down there, I was like, I feel like I'm going to something more than just home. I couldn't explain this experience that was, I could feel in front of me, but I couldn't see.
So what Chelita for you became like a mentor, is that right? Yes.
It just kind of naturally fell into place. A lot of my guidance and mentorship has come from her. You know, sometimes people ask like, oh, how did you become a Kaimiri Maree? What course did you do? And I'm like, I went to this wānanga, but I didn't really do a course. I just kept ending up in the spaces of these people, particularly Joydah, that had these gifts and this guidance to offer me.
And I mean, I think now, particularly after COVID, it's becoming more and more apparent that we don't necessarily need all of the patriarchal structure that is the pen and paper of this is how you get your certificate, because people can even get their certificate and they're still shit at what they do. And so I think like that bravery to step into your soul work and do that without necessarily having the qualification is like really brave. And also what the world needs, we don't have time at the moment, I feel, to wait for people to do 3-4 years of training. If you think about it, especially from your experience and my experience of life events and experiences, I look at my past and I think everything that I'm doing now led me up to this. So like learning to process trauma and abusive relationships, learning how to be around people who have had trauma and what that feels like for them and how you can respond, understanding the body, and obviously with having studied psychology and things, understanding how the mind works. So it's like you see in your life the segments of existences that lead you up into you carrying out your soul work. And I think often it's just like you said about with the wānanga going is taking that leap of faith and trusting your own soul to guide you, and getting out of the head and into the soul.
I think that's a massive part of the journey is kind of getting the head out of the way, but that is really difficult as well. And even in my own journey, it's like there was this force that behind me that was pushing me to go and do it. And yet, you know, there's still been so many challenges in my head, like, who am I to do this work? Who do I think I am? And that whole conditioning of the patriarchal system to be like, you haven't done your training, no one gave you a certificate, so, you know, you're not supposed to be doing this work. And I'm like, but back in the day, I don't think anyone had certificates. We were lucky enough back then to be born with gifts and be nurtured all the way through. And I think we've lost a little bit of that, but there are still people out there that have the capacity to see, like Joydah, and be like, okay, there's something there. I'm going to just nurture that a little bit. And I think it's that balance between trusting all the things that have prepared you for where you are going, but also being open to say yes to the opportunities that come towards you.
Totally.
Diving in that door.
Do you want to just share a bit about what it is? Because you and Joydah work together in tandem, right? But if you want to just share a little bit deeper about how that works and what you guys strive for as a couple and as a team.
I feel like every part of our lives has become relatively interlinked. You know, like with her being a musician, I support a lot on like the admin side, sort of making sure everything is running and happening, doing a lot of the background work, but also doing a lot of the energetic work in our concert spaces. We hold her music very ceremonially, and so ensuring that that space is held and protected in a way like any other kind of healing work that we would do is also part of my roles, so that she can just be that full channel of what she is and offer that to the people. And then, you know, vice versa in Miri Miri, she's jumped on board with that. She's also been in many of Joydah's spaces where she's had the opportunity to observe, but also carries her own lines and lineages of healing hands-on work. So we co-collaborate in those spaces. And then we also do voice activation together, which is a project that she had started with two of her friends, Sandra and Cadby. Sandra had to go back to Mexico and Cadby's moved on to Bali. And so we were just kind of left with this little seed and we were like, we should do something with it. And it just kind of evolved itself. We felt the call to start some in-person group sessions, which were really potent and really powerful and transformative for people. And we've just recently opened our first online portal.
I saw that.
We're so really excited about. Because there's so many people that are like, oh, I want to come to your thing, but, when are you coming here to this town? And so we were like, okay, well, what's the solution? And with a lifestyle like ours, where we're constantly traveling to different places, how can we find continuous places to support our community? So online became that answer. And I guess, what we strive for, and both of us, we both have that soul calling, that mission to serve our communities. We know that we have gifts to offer them. And like I said before, if we keep those to ourselves, we start to get sick. Utilize our gifts and share them with the people, then
you're not living in balance, I guess.
No,
we're living in your authentic truth.
Exactly. And that's a massive part of what our voice activation space is about, is cultivating and activating that most authentic and true self. And, Joydah's music speaks to that as well. And Kaimiri is a different process, but as we know, so many things live within the body. And so to be able to awhi and to put open space for people.
Can you just talk a little bit about what your goal is with the voice activation and what that is?
Voice activation, the goal.
Or I guess what you're hoping people get out of the voice activation, what it looks like.
I guess we've both, me particularly, have been on my own massive voice activation journey. That unconditioning of who I'm supposed to be and how I'm supposed to speak and how I'm supposed to show up, and learning, who I really am and how I feel I need to show up in the world, and how being my most authentic self can impact the people around me and impact everyone, to show up as they are and who they are. And that really is the intention of this space, is to unpack some of that stuff for people and help them grow the confidence and the courage to show up as they are. And it's such a multi-layered aspect of ourselves. There are so many ways in which people need to learn how to speak as who they are. There's also so many ways in which people need to quieten down to remember who they are. Because sometimes people's masks go like this and sometimes they go like this. And that's not to say that both parts don't exist in who we are, but they're all things that I see, they work on the same wavelength, but just different modalities, different tools into the same result or the same outcome.
I guess it's like that saying of it's all connected into the one source energy and collective consciousness. And so understanding that when you're working with someone in the body and with them, that's also healing the collective as a whole. And in the same way as when Joydah is doing her music, that is giving medicine to the people that can be shared out at a wider scope, because it's like restoring people's modi.
Yeah, it's such a complex yet simple part of ourselves, is how we show up through our voice.
Yeah, I love that. And actually it's interesting because when I was reading about it, I was like, wow, this is so similar to what I'm doing. So I love how different people have different takes on things, and we're all, again, because we're all connected into the one source energy, right? We're sharing what source is guiding us all to share, and it ends up being very similar. So in the virtual roots that I do, it's about healing the inner child and healing parts of you that have formed those old thought structures and beliefs and programming to then be free to be yourself and trust your intuition and inner guidance. And then as you trust that and you learn that and build a relationship with that, how you then go on to create the reality around you and expand. And so it's interesting that we're all kind of doing similar things but very different as well.
And that something I have come to understand in these healing realms is how the thread of competition is really easy to remove, because we're all here trying to achieve the same thing, support people in the same kind of way. And we all have our unique gifts and ways of doing that. And every individual will be drawn to a unique Māori, to a unique person, to a unique set of tools that is going to help unlock their codes and keys in order for them to like become who they are. And I just think that that's so beautiful in these spaces, and that there's no need to be like, oh, well, she's doing what I'm doing, so I'm worried that no one's going to come see me, because people that are called to you will come to you, you know?
Yeah. Actually, that's something we can go into a little bit deeper, is about I guess understanding ego and moving out of the way of ego, because I think when you come into this spiritual work, that's like a big part. And I think the first part for me of releasing ego was releasing the fear of what other people think of me, and then also releasing the thing that I have to be a certain way and be a certain greatness. But I think for these to work as a collective and to collaborate like you and I are, is you have to get to a place where there is no ego about worrying about who's doing it better or who's doing it more successfully or who's doing it right. And just knowing that, who's magnetized to you is for you. Obviously, the life experiences you've had is different than what I've had. So I'm going to attract people that resonate with my experience, and you're going to have people that resonate with your experience. And then I'm not a musician, so I'm not going to attract someone necessarily in the same way that Joydah would, because she can speak to that part of someone. So I guess my question is like, how or what was your process for letting your ego get out of the way, if you can think of anything around that?
It's a good one. I feel like as it can be out of the way, it's also always still there. And I believe that it should be there, because in a way, the ego is what can help you to have that confidence. But how do you have that confidence without thinking that you're better than someone else, or, that you've got more than someone else has? And I think, like anything, it's like a dance. Like someone said to me before something about like you've got to feed the ego to keep it in check, but you can't get rid of it because it's a part of who you are. So in what ways can you feed your ego and support it so that it allows you to stand as who you are, but sort of keep it at bay enough that it's not ruling you, it's not running you, it's not taking the charge. And how I don't really know how or what. I think I'm still in that dance at times, and I think I'm often challenged by other people's egos still. As much as I'm a
lifelong one,
learning to stand in my power. If someone has a really strong ego, I'm like, I almost just don't want any part of it at all. But I don't know. I think that being in service, having been in service all my life, like most of my work experience prior to this has been in hospitality. And I feel like that is a place that has humbled me to understand the way in which so many different people in the world are, to see the way that sometimes people will treat people that they believe are lower than them, has given me an open perspective that, like, no matter what someone does, whether they pick up the garbage or they're the cleaner or they're the multi-billionaire living at the top of the apartment complex, that everyone is just a person, and we all deserve to be treated as a person, and to love and respect one another, because without one another, no matter what our role is in this world, is that we all make the world go round together, and we must honour and acknowledge everyone and what they do. And I think I hold that really close to my heart, because I know what it's like to be on the other end of that spectrum. I just want everyone to know that their life is worthy.
Yes.
And so I think that's something that keeps me down and humbled.
And that everyone has that potential to be so great, and being able to see people as their divine spark, right? To then we can help that grow. I think too, in the way you were talking about being your authentic self and being able to have those conversations within yourself, I think that helps to balance the ego as well. If you know yourself really deeply, then when you are challenged by those people who come at you with a big ego or come at you with judgment, you can go internal and deal with the issue internally rather than externally reacting. And I think that's like a big part of our work when we're working with people, is to keep that balance internally, whether that's through like different methods of journaling, meditating, going for walks in nature, singing, those kinds of things, those healthy rhythms that keep us centered. Yeah. I'm interested to know what your favorite kind of taking care of yourself things are.
Again, a good question, because it's something I'm constantly navigating, falling in and out of, like
especially traveling.
It's definitely a navigation, but I also find that I don't like to do the same thing every single day. Like that structure, it does not work for me. I could do the same many things at different times of the day. Like maybe every day I do yoga, every day I'll go for a walk, every day I'll do some journaling, every day I'll do some affirmations, but they won't always be like this first in the morning, then that. And lately, particularly while I've landed in this space, something that I've been called into for ages and have just started picking up again has been dancing.
Oh, cool.
Bringing some more movement into my body and allowing that to activate, but also to release.
I think that's important when you're doing Maree, to as well give the body a different type of movement that releases and frees up space.
And even it's come to me a lot through our voice activation, is that we have all these tools and practices that people are doing, and it is moving stuff, but like as a Kaimiri, I often feel people's things in my body halfway through some of those sessions that I'm like, oh my God, can you guys get up and move? Because, I'm not going to do it for you here. This is about you activating your own genius and your own.
Yes.
So can you get up and move your body? And then they move and I'm like, oh, that's better. And it's reminded me that how much I need to do that for myself. Yeah. And bringing awareness and embodiment back into the body. Because I think as important as all of our mindfulness tools and our spiritual connection it is, if we're not anchoring it into this physical, then I don't know.
We're here to be human, right?
Yeah. So things like lately yoga and dancing have been like my ultimates, because they're bringing me back in.
Yeah. Well, I think it's easy for you, right, to be out here. That's like kind of like, I don't know for you, but for me, it was kind of my natural state quite easily. And so then it's about teaching yourself to be safe within the body. The other question I was going to ask you was if you can explain to our overseas listeners what Maree is, because people who aren't from New Zealand might be like, what are they on about?
Yeah. I love this question because I always find it really hard to answer, because, Maree is one of those things that is like, it's so different when you experience it than when you just hear about it. But in saying that, Maree is an Indigenous healing practice here in Aotearoa. It's a bodywork practice, so we work hands-on, applying pressure, similar to massage, but also having that holistic perspective on it and working on all of the layers through all of the realms. So working on the mental and emotional body and the spiritual body, and also understanding the concept of relationships between all of these things, but also how our body and our mind and our spirit is in relationship to all of our relationships with people, with the earth, with the elements. And I suppose the work that we do is diverse, and every session is unique, but very often it will be to release stagnant energy or trauma and pain from the body. But at the same time, like I said, it's emotional and it's spiritual, because if we're not working on those layers as well, whatever that dis-ease is in the body will only return if you don't acknowledge the layers in these other spaces. So yeah, a lot of it is to do with clearing, creating space within the body. And this also allows for, creating space in the body allows one for the next layer of things to rise and come to the surface, but also to create space to not only bring your shit up, but to bring your gifts up as well. So we can support in activating the dormant gifts that are inside of you, so that you can, it's easier for you to step into who you are. And often work is done to, realign and rebalance all of those parts of yourself. Yeah, it's something that, like I said, it can be very diverse. Like sometimes I end up doing things in these sessions I've never done before, or I almost like don't know what I'm doing, but I know what I'm doing, because more than anything, we do our best to get out of the way. We do carry knowledge and wisdom from our teachings and our guidance and all of that, but it's tipuna-led, so it's ancestral-led, and it's spirit-led, Wairua-led. As a healer, as a conduit, that's the best thing that I feel I can do, is just get out of the way and be that channel for whatever is coming through. And sometimes I know what I'm doing and sometimes I don't, but I trust in it, mostly based on the confirmations that I receive from the people that I am working with.
Yeah, I so relate to sometimes you're working on someone and you don't know what you're doing, but you know what you're doing. I've had sessions where people are like, that's amazing, how long have you been doing that? And I'm like, I haven't done that before, actually. You're like, wait, what? So I think that demonstrates the ability, when we're tuned in and we are really trusting of our intuition and our guidance, and we get out of the way, it is really the ability to be guided and just know what you're doing when you don't know what you're doing. I think my question that I get a lot, and I'm interested for you to answer, is do you think that everybody has ability to operate like this?
I think everyone does, because I think a big part of it as well is like a remembering. Like for me, and I'm sure many of people that are hopefully listening believe in past lives, right? And so I feel many of us, maybe you're being open to that guidance and that intuition and that remembering. It may not be in healing. I'm sure you have some capacity to support other people in that sense, but if your gifts all of your life have been in another realm, like another, I don't know what, but we've all had positions in societies where we have gifts to offer. Maybe we're like the best cook, we make this delicious, nourishing kai, and that is medicine as well. In its own unique way. But for those people that like they just grow up and like no one ever showed them how to do it, but they just make phenomenal food all the time, like maybe your gifting is in that, when you're in the kitchen and you're just throwing things into a pot and all of a sudden it's like this best thing ever. But I think everyone does have the capacity to drop into that place of intuition and guidance and remembering. But to not feel pressured that like, oh, everyone I know is doing this thing, but I feel like I want to do this thing. It's like, follow that. That is your guidance. That is your truth. That is what is calling you forward.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's, I like the term you use about remembering, because I think it's so common for people to come in and think that they've come in as this blank slate and like they've got to figure out who they are their whole life. But when you can take the perspective of you come in with prior knowledge, not only from yourself, but you can create the ability to tap into deeper consciousness and channel things, then it's easier to find who you are and where you're going. And that's similar, I guess, as to what you're discovering in the voice activation course, and similar in virtual roots, of like understanding who you are at the core and what your soul blueprint is, so that you can offer the best version of yourself to everyone.
And I think remembering that we're all like unique expressions of what existence is, of what consciousness is, and that's the beauty. It's like we're all one and we're all the same, but we're actually unique.
We're
connected to the same source, but the way that it's come through into this world is like unique.
100%.
So you shouldn't be expressing what that unity consciousness is like the person beside you.
Yes,
it should be doing it as you are.
I love that. Yeah. Another question I have for you is what it looks like for you and Joydah as like being a conscious couple, and how you, because obviously like you said, you're very intertwined, you work together, you live together, you travel together, and how that looks of your relationship and keeping it stable and healthy while also, you know, being such a support to so many others.
I think for us that like honest and open communication is the key. And you know, we're still human, we still have all of these things that come up, we're constantly working on things, but when we're able to communicate in a way that is open and clear, and like coming back to the ego, recognizing when both of our egos are like this, like banging up, and we just go, okay, take a minute, you go over here, I'll go over here. But yeah, at the end of the day, for me, like communication is everything. And we can create all of these stories of what someone is doing or someone's thinking. But if you just talk to that person, you can actually truly understand like where they're at, what they need, express where you're at, what you need. Yeah, I think we found ourselves very intertwined for sure. And we're like recognizing this codependency, but also this like need for independence at the same time. And it's like right now I'm in Sunshine Coast and she's in New Zealand. It's quite a powerful time for us just to feel back into ourselves. And we've always known that we need to take these times to ourselves. It can be hard when, you know, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to go off by myself, but I want to go do work and you're in my work, so I'll come back and do the work with you. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting dance and dynamic for sure. But like I said, I think having that communication is the thing that our relationship holds, to be able to navigate all of the different layers and places in which we are in partnership.
Yeah, I love that. I think too, being able to really stay in tune to your own power and your own being, then, you know, you both can meet in the middle. And learn where you need to make adjustments and considerations, but where, you know, where it really needs you to hold your ground in whatever it is that's coming up.
Yeah. And that's been massive for me. Joydah is a big energy. She has a big energy. And that's what part of the reason why I love her so much, is because she's so strong in who she is. And it's been the most beautiful challenge to be faced with that every single day, because I've really had to step into who I am and step into my power to like meet that, instead of feeling like it's like maybe overcoming me. And actually coming to understand, like you mentioned at the beginning, the power in my quietness and the power in like just holding that and not needing to be anything more. Whereas like her unique blueprint is to be loud. It's to be like, wow, all out there, you know. We've had this beautiful dance of her teaching me to step up and become more outspoken, and me teaching her how to like just hush down a little bit and like be a little bit more quiet and reserved, and offering those gifts to one another and being our unique selves and how different we are, and finding the similarities that coexist between the differences. And using each other's strengths and pulling on those is such a beautiful thing, but also knowing where we need to push each other. I know, like in my own relationship, my partner Cal, she's really been pushing me to be more outspoken in what I have to offer. And truthfully, I kind of would quite like to hide some of it, but she's like, no. Yeah, you're not here to just do little things. You need to go out there with what. And she's like, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you shine that. And I can hear that that's similar with Joydah. Yeah, like that. And although I am a big personality and I am extroverted, but there's parts of me that as I've got more comfortable with myself, I don't feel the need to share those parts of me so much. But I think I'm being pushed to share more. And so that's like a fun thing to navigate with each other, right? Yeah, definitely. And when you asked me to do this, because that all of like share your story, speak your, you know, share what you have to offer has been really loud for a long time, and I'm just sort of like, And I think that comes to so many things, but it's like that's of the ego, you know. I think something we don't speak about, you know, there's people that are like in their ego and they're like all out there and they're like for it. And sometimes there's the counter side of it as well, you know, like for me, I'm like, I don't know if I want to put myself out there because then people are going to see me and people are going to talk about me. And it's not necessarily the fear of what they will think of me, but it's like that they'll hear me and they'll see me. And like that is scary. And it reminds me of that quote, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
Yeah.
And I think standing in that light and shining in that light is way more scary than like being in the shadows.
Yes, I fully agree with that. I fully agree with that. And I get the sense that we probably will end up somewhere along the way interconnecting again and working. And something Cal and I are talking about is really wanting to create a wider network of healers and different things who are all interconnected and support each other, but also create like a expansive community. People can share and exchange their giftings with each other, and there's no lack really for anybody, because I think like we're moving into like personally I think that a lot of our structures are going to collapse, like the health system and a lot of the government stuff. I feel it's on the brink of collapse. Like the health system is struggling, and it has been for at least 10 years. And so it's about creating those other avenues of connection that you can kind of say, okay, you're like this kind of injury, I know this person that can work with that. And like you're struggling with, you know, your intuition and your guidance, I know this person that can work with that. And so really interconnecting with each other again, where everyone has to balance their egos enough that it's not about who's bigger or better. It's about like who's the right person for that person.
Yeah.
And then the last question, kind of to finish up, something you mentioned in the start was about your willingness, people's willingness or your own willingness to invest in the financial cost with going to Joydah's thing. So I guess I just wanted to ask you how you kind of navigate that with helping people to understand the investment that they're investing in, because like from my experience, people are so keen to put $20 a week on coffees or $20 a week on cigarettes or $40 a week on, I don't know, a gym membership or something. But if you say like, here's this life transforming program that's only going to take you 10 weeks or 12 weeks and it's $40 a week, people are kind of like, oh, I can't afford it. So I think like I would love to pick your brains about that and removing that limitation and seeing the importance in their own well-being. How you have any words around that?
For me, I feel like more than anything, my experience around that comes down to my own personal relationship with money and my own personal relationship in investing, and also acknowledging my own worth, because that has been a massive journey. I didn't used to be able to charge for miri just to koha because I thought it was like, oh, I'm helping the people, you know, some people are struggling. It's not easy, because that is where I was at when I first started stepping into these spaces. But I also had to come to a point to acknowledge my own work, my own energy and my own worth that I was putting into these spaces.
Yeah.
And I think only through being able to acknowledge ourselves do we start to see people willing to invest, because we're vibrating that energy out there. We're in the universe. What I'm giving is worth it. And so people going, what she's giving is worth it. Yeah. And I still struggle with these things, you know, like we just put our online course out for 7/7 and I was like, holy fuck, who do I think I am? But at the same time, I've had enough experiences to trust in what I can support people with, but only if they show up and put in the work. Because as healers, it's like you walk hand in hand with people. You don't carry them on your back.
Yes.
And
yes,
so
I love that.
I think that, you know, that's all that I can do to support people to be willing to invest in themselves, and they have to do the rest of the work to find themselves to get there. In saying that, if someone has the courage enough to come to me and be completely open and honest and transparent about their situation and where they're at and what they can do, I will alter my expectations to meet them because of the courage to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not just going to say, if someone shares their life story to me and is like, this is where I'm at, this is what I can give you, and I'll give you that much next week, I'm like, okay. I'm not going to keep the healing from you. But if you sit quiet and reserved and go, oh, I just won't because I can't, well, then that's on you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that money is a type of energy that a lot of people still operate in the currency of, right? So when someone is having to invest their money into this type of work, then that's showing that their energy is ready in there to interact with. But the same as you, I've had people who don't necessarily have the financial means to work with me, but come to me and say, I really want to do the work. And I say, okay, well, this is like, what can you offer? So like I have one person who comes and has sessions with me every week at the moment, well, not every week, but is doing my virtual roots course. And then I've done a one-on-one session with them once. And instead of them financially contributing, they were like, can I just come and clean your house once a week? And so, yeah, of course, that's like actually, and I didn't tell them, but I had been manifesting a house cleaner. So, you know, it works for me and it works for them. And so I think like but because they have that receptivity, you know, it's reciprocal, the energy is reciprocal, where they're willing to give. It's not exactly what I've said is there to give, but it's still that invested in the process of healing. And I think if you truly invest in the process of healing, then it opens you to a greater experience and a greater transformation. I think it's like if you show up to school every day and you are just there to eat your lunch, it's much the same as if you don't have to pay for the service and you've got nothing to lose really if you're in it and you're not paying for it.
Yeah, and I learnt and understood that concept when we ran an event co-creating with friends of ours, and they had invited people just to come along for free. And what I noticed in these people that had come along is like some of them, like they weren't really partaking in what was there. Some of them got up and left early. To me, as an overseer, there wasn't invested, and it was also becoming disruptive. So it's almost like because they hadn't actually invested themselves into that space, they weren't showing up for themselves, and they also didn't know how to sink into that because there wasn't a circle of reciprocity there.
Yeah.
You know, whether they were conscious of that or not, I really feel like they knew they hadn't given anything, and so what were they receiving and what was the cost of that?
Yeah. Or it just doesn't align with them completely. So therefore they can't receive it, right? Because they're not even at that point in their journey. I guess to close up, the last question is a message to anyone who's on a pathway of becoming more aligned within themselves or opening up to their soul purpose or their new version of what they're here to do. What's something you would love to tell them?
I guess just keep going and keep trusting, you know, wherever you're at, whether it's one step at a time or one massive leap at a time, like just take that next step, follow that next calling, trust that intuition, you know, be okay to fuck it up too, be okay to feel like you're something and you're getting it wrong, because whether it's feels like it's meant for you or not, it's meant for you, because if it doesn't feel good, then it's a lesson. You know, it's something that you're taught to keep you back on track of the pathway that you're wanting to walk. But yeah, just keep trusting, keep showing up for yourself, and keep loving yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for joining us. And just quickly, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they go about that?
You can find me on Awa Aroha. It's AWAAROHA on both Instagram and Facebook. And voice activation is also both on Instagram and Facebook, or you go to joydahmay.com/voice activation for like all the details.
Oh, cool. So joydahmay.com.
Yeah.
/voice activation. Cool. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So grateful
to
chat. Be here with you.